Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here on a Monday afternoon. It's 5 to 6 here in Hawaii, but actually in New Delhi, it's another time altogether. We are joining Gauri Khandekar by Skype in New Delhi today. Gauri, how are you?
I'm good, Jay. Thank you. Lovely to be again here on your show.
It's great to have you with us. So Gauri is, if you don't recall, Gauri is a think tank person with FRIDE, FRIDE, which is a think tank out of Spain, Madrid, Spain, which has an office in Brussels, and she handles Asian affairs in Europe in the Brussels office of FRIDE. And right now she's, I don't know if you're on R&R or assignment or vacation or what, but she is not in Europe. Flash news, Gauri is not in Europe, she's in New Delhi, and we talked to her on Skype in New Delhi. Why not? So tell us the purpose of your trip, if you would, to New Delhi, Gauri.
Well, Jay, I'm here on mission to get together European and Indian think tanks, so to build a network of EU and Indian think tanks, and I'm doing this for the EU. So yeah, that's why I'm here. And also it's a nice opportunity to see all my old friends.
Oh, good. So I just wanted to catch up with you, not only on things in Europe from afar, the view from Delhi, we're calling this show, but also on, some of the things that have come to your attention in India. And the first subject we should discuss here with the world between us, if I can say that, the world between us, straddling the world, is Greece. The Greek problem, the monetary problem in Greece vis-a-vis Germany and the EU has not been resolved. And I mean, there are rumors and claims flying in all directions, but where are we and how far are we from a solution?
Well, I think we're not very far from a Greek bankruptcy claim.
Okay.
Yes, it's true, because Greece doesn't want to give in to the EU trio and the ones who are extending their bailout. They don't want to give in to the promises they made to their people when they got elected. And none of the EU chiefs or the IMF are willing to accept any of Greece's pre-election promises to its people. So they require austerity. Greece does not want to give it to them. And the option now is to default, Well, Greece has also tried to reach out to Russia, but that's not really good for Greece either, because its economy is really tied to the European Union. But also because Russia is not in that great a state that it can also really help out Greece, because Russia is under sanctions, as we all know. So it's a tough situation here, and it's basically this next month will decide whether Greece will be in the Eurozone, which a zone of EU countries which has the euro for the currency, or will it leave? Or will it be able to default and be bankrupt within the Eurozone? So it's a very tricky question, and it's also related to the sovereignty crisis in the European Union, but also impacts on what the EU project is. It undermines in a certain way the whole idea of the European Union.
Well, it's of great concern to see Europe devolve this way, because I think it reflects, other problems maybe below the surface. So what happens? You mentioned the possibility of a bankruptcy. In this country, cities can go bankrupt. I think counties can go bankrupt. States cannot go bankrupt. And certainly the federal government cannot go bankrupt. It's just not permitted. But what happens when a country in the EU goes bankrupt? Can you play out that scenario for us?
Well, nobody really knows it, because these have been some of the most advanced economies of the world. Nobody ever conceived a country going bankrupt just because To join the EU and the Eurozone, you had certain criteria you had to fulfill. You know, very low debt ratio, very low inflation, and a certain GDP growth level. So these were the Maastricht criteria, the basic criteria to, you know, to be a part of this group of major economies. But somewhere down the line, Greece cheated on its records to get in. And then you had the crisis, and now you're in a very tricky situation of having a country that was bankrupt without, you know, despite having all these great roads. So it's really not clear what would happen. What I think would happen, really, is even if Greece defaults, I think it should be put outside of the Eurozone just to, how do you say it, keep the Eurozone, keep it in quarantine until it can really be ready to come back. And I think this will also increase investor confidence in the euro, you know, that they are doing something, that, okay, Greece has been removed, like the trouble part has been cut out for some time until Greece can come back. And I think that would really be needed if, you know, everybody outside of the EU or the Eurozone wants to really have confidence in the currency, because it's falling terribly internationally. My money is getting less and less worth something here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Europe, I think we suspect that Europe has an undercurrent of problems that we haven't even seen emerge yet. And Greece somehow reveals, it's the canary in the coal mine in some ways, it reveals these problems. And when you take it together with other issues that are pending in Europe, it's of great concern. And of course, you know, if Greece fails, however that plays out, then the rest of Europe is somehow at risk, isn't it? It's kind of a domino thing. It's whatever the process is, if Greece fails, that's not the end of it. There's more in the pipeline. Am I right?
I mean, you're right. You're completely right, Jay. But the question is also, if you don't let Greece fail in a way, I mean, fail if they don't complete the promises to Greece insists on having no austerity and no reform, and it wishes to go in that direction where it will fail, I think that should be allowed in a way. Because any other way, giving in to Greece's demands, I think is only discouraging for other countries like Spain, Portugal, Ireland, who have really worked hard to put reforms in place, even Italy, you know. So what Greece has done now is that they've changed their set of negotiators with the EU. So Yanis Varoufakis, he's the economic minister, finance minister of Greece, and he has a certain different style of negotiating, and that's not really how the EU officials are used to, and you know, it somehow kind of undermines the severity of the situation in the way he tries to negotiate. So Greece has changed these negotiators' team, and overnight there was EU shares were boosted, you know. So it's all a matter of how they manage it now. But I really think that it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah. Wouldn't you see this, at least in part, as a failure of understanding by the public in Greece and by the press in Greece for failing to fully inform them as to the consequences of their action or inaction? At the end of the day, it seems to me that people don't fully understand that they're playing with fire. And that's the failure of the government, the media, the leadership in general, in terms of public opinion. I know that not much can be done to change the direction of the ship of public opinion at this point. But do you agree with me that the country, in terms of its political appreciation of the issue, is simply in the wrong place.
I would disagree on that, Jay. You know why? Because they've been going through like uh, these negotiations and talks for more than 6 years now. You know, almost 6 years. And
Okay.
the public is so aware of all of the change. They voted down many regimes now, many different people. The government has fallen a few times, and they know exactly what they're doing, you know?
Yeah.
And one thing they want is that they don't want austerity anymore. They also know that that you know the situation is tough. They will have to have reforms, but they just cannot accept it. One of the reasons is because they've been used to a lifestyle which was something that they could not afford before, and that was financed through debt, you know. And they were living that lifestyle. They've gotten used to that lifestyle, and they don't want to give it up clearly. These are realities that Greece hasn't faced, you know.
Yeah.
The other issue is of the euro, because even though they say that there are so many reporters that have gone on the streets of Greece and they've asked the people that, well, you know, you might lose the euro, and would you want to lose the euro? They're like, no, we don't want to lose the euro, but we don't want reforms either. So it's, you know, you can't have both in a way, and, you know, something has to give. And it's the choice of, I mean, you cannot elect just anybody who promises you anything and probably get it down. No, that's not going to happen, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's you can take almost anything and making an opera out of it, and I'm thinking that maybe this whole story of the fall of Greece could be a great opera. It would be tragic though.
Yeah, but maybe I think Greece would resurface like the phoenix, you know, and that could be a wonderful ending to the opera.
Yes, it would surprise everybody. But somehow that connects with the migration problem, because that's just another ill in the eurozone. And
Yes.
it's you know, remarkable that the U.S. has had migration problems for a long time, and we really haven't been all that sensitive to solving the problems. And you know, the reaction of the country around the migration problems, it sort of works itself out in some ways. Query whether it would work itself out different or better if we had been more attentive to dealing with it, and we're still not attentive to dealing with it. And it's a great failure of Congress that they haven't had immigration reform all this time. But you guys in Europe, you know, you have the same problem, and it's coming home now to you literally from these boatloads of refugees off northern Africa. What's the mood about this? This must be fairly threatening, because at the end of the day, it's not only a humanitarian crisis, it's an economic crisis, right?
Definitely. I mean, you know, people in thousands have been coming across the Mediterranean Sea. And the Mediterranean Sea has become a sea of sadness and despair in a way, you know, because there are so many that die in those waters. But they're just leaving. I mean, it's become a whole business, you know, for the traffickers. They charge huge amounts of money to people mainly from Kenya or Somalia that come across, that want to come across. And they know that even if the boat capsizes in a way, there will be the Italians or perhaps the Greek who will rescue them, you know, because that's what the European countries have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
They do rescue. It's not like, for example, Australian policy where they did deter the boats from landing at all, you know, on Australian soil. So the Europeans have been good enough to allow that. They've allowed them, they rescue them. But I mean, it's 30,000 almost a year or more, and not always the qualified workforce that Europe would want, you know. And in a situation where EU countries are really struggling with their economies, I mean, most migrants also go to Greece, you know. I mean, what could Greece offer them? But it's it's kind of further complication, and what's happening there is not only that these countries have to rescue them, and they're getting them back to Europe and trying to integrate them. So integration has become really poor. I mean, given the vast numbers, the absorption quantity is quite poor. There are countries within the EU who don't want them. And so there are some that are facing the whole brunt of this crisis. And the other issue is just that, I mean, there has to be kind of some mechanism put in place to deter these traffickers, because internationally the EU is coming off really bad. And I think it's unfair to judge the EU in a bad light, because, I mean, if any country would have drones of migrants just coming across, it's not possible to really point a finger. But in Delhi, the EU is really coming across in a bad light, and I think that's somewhat unfair.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, that it's corrosive. It's not going to solve anybody's problem, and nobody knows really what to do about it. Let's take a short break and think this over a little more carefully. Okay, that's Gauri Khandekar of FRIDE. She's now in New Delhi. FRIDE, coming to a continent near you. Yeah. And we're looking at the view from New Delhi here at midnight in Brussels, but not Brussels. In this case, for today, it's New Delhi. We'll be right back with Gauri.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Ted Ralston, folks, host of our show at ThinkTech Hawaii called Where the Road Leads, where we talk about technology influencing the future of Hawaii. Technology, of course, is the art of solving problems. We always bring in interesting and informed guests who can see from different perspectives and different points of view how that future might unfold and how technology can assist us in getting there. So once again, join us 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Fridays. Ted Ralston, your host. And please, if you have ideas that you'd like us to address on this show, or folks who you think should be on it, let us know.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Gauri Khandekar of FRIDE, which is a think tank in Europe, in Madrid, and also in Brussels, where she works. But she's off right now in New Delhi, and we're connecting with her by Skype in New Delhi, and it's actually 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday. Did I get that right?
Yes. True.
Okay, and we're calling this midnight in Brussels, but in this case, New Delhi, the view from Delhi. So just to finish up on that, this reveals a huge social problem, or maybe it exacerbates a huge social problem in Europe. Where we as American tourists, for example, we see Europe in terms of its great historic, buildings and icons of one kind or another. In fact, European society is very diverse these days, and the European social structure is changing these days. And Europe is a different place than you might have imagined even, 5 or 10 years ago. And somehow the shift of population, the migration of people from the Middle East and from Africa, Northern Africa, is already having an effect on Europe. And I wonder, who among the countries in the EU is taking the most rational steps to deal with this? Who among the countries in the EU is going to be a leader in trying to balance things?
Jay, there's no kind of plan in place in that sense. I mean, everybody is going to this small island of Lampedusa in Italy. And Italy is basically receiving all of these people that come, and then Greece, of course. but there is no consensus. You know, most people do not want to accept um, the migrant. Most EU countries do not want to accept because, of course, as you very rightly mentioned, is changing the structures. Europe is changing. It's becoming more diverse. Not always, you know, um, uh, the quality of the human resource is not always better because unlike the US, you know, there's not the pick and choose of the best of the world, you know.
Yeah.
So it is changing in a way. Nothing really is being done concretely in the sense of managing these the people that come into Italy. So what Italy has done is to give them residence cards, and most of the migrants decide that they want to go to France, you know, or they want to go to Sweden or wherever. I mean, Sweden has also received a lot of migrants, especially from Iraq during the Iraq War. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's an EU asylum policy that's in that's not really as dynamic, but it's in place. But they're also going to, you know, better it, and that's always how the EU works. They always try to better things in a way, slowly, step by step. But there needs to be a lot more of burden sharing in the EU, which is not there.
Well, you know, I can't help but think that part of the 21st century is that boundaries are coming down. Boundaries are essentially dissolving. You know, I remember I took a trip to France, and we drove across the Rhine River, I think it was, and noticed that there was no boundary. There wasn't a gate, a fence, a guardhouse, a policeman, a soldier, or anything. You just drove from France to Germany. And it struck me as a kind of a foretelling the notion that boundaries were coming down, that countries didn't care, people didn't care as much about boundaries. And I think what we have now in the 21st century, don't you agree, is we have borders that are coming down. And it means a sort of a global swirl of culture and language and people in general as never before. And where it goes and how quickly it goes there and the effects of it, you know, not yet known. But it seems that, you know, with modern telecommunications, with modern transportation, everybody is ultimately going to be able to go pretty much everywhere, with a few exceptions. And we'll have a different world. We're having a different world now. And I think this migration is part of that.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, just look at the two of us, for instance. You know, you're in Hawaii. I'm a European think tanker doing a show from Delhi. And I absolutely love this trend because it's, you know, everybody's becoming global citizens. And why not? You know, we should not, I don't agree that anybody should be confined. And probably if I was a migrant in Somalia or Kenya with children, you know, in a very dangerous world, I probably would have gotten on a boat too, you know. If there was an island of peace and security and prosperity right across a tiny sea, so I would have done the same. The problem is, of course, in managing better managing this situation, and to prepare for the globalization that is going on. But you know, the feature of global citizens, that, you know, there might not be any borders. And you were right, there is no border inside the EU.
Yeah.
Even though prosperity spreads, risk can also spread, no?
Yeah.
So
Well, then I think of a place like Yemen, okay, which is devolving. It's not the only place, but it's devolving. And if I lived in Yemen, I would want to leave Yemen immediately because I see it going into a state of nature, you know, in the older sense, state of nature. As I recall, the leadership of Yemen wrote to the West and said, please send soldiers because there is no personal security left in this country. We have to have personal security and order, and we can't do business, we can't live without having some kind of order in Yemen, and I think that's really, really tragic, And I think it's probably going to happen or is happening in other places in the Middle East and Africa where there is no personal security and therefore there is no social compact. There is no ability to conduct business or be safe in your home. This is very troubling because the West is not prepared to be the world's policeman. There's no country, no group of countries that are going to send troops everywhere in the world where governments are failing. And I think this also is being revealed by the migrant issue in Europe, don't you think?
Yes, I agree. I totally agree, Jay. I mean, you know, Europe is no longer the same partner to the US probably as it was, or even, you know, the global actor that it once was, you know. And there is this war fatigue, like we discussed in the last show, migrant crisis just as more to, you know, Europe's huge list of problems in a way. And there's no kind of global policing role in the future that Europe can really pick up. Actually, when the Yemen crisis unfolded, there were 10 European countries that whose citizens were airlifted or, you know, safely removed from the country by India. You know, India, China have had massive airlifts ongoing in Yemen because they have migrant workers there, the seasonal workers, and in millions, you know. So they have done a great job in that sense in terms of disaster management. And most European countries have had to depend on other countries. So this is just an example of, you know, what the situation is, and I don't think that, you know, any of these European countries will ever set foot soon enough.
To be a member of an international think tank is really an ideal occupation these days because you can see all of this. You have, you know, sort of clairvoyance about all these great sea changes around the world, and you have an advantage over most people. But let's turn to India for a minute. It's been about a year, since the Modi election was concluded.
Yes.
And you're back there, you're talking to people, you're talking to your friends, whatnot, associates. What's the feeling? Is he living up to expectations? Do people see this as a new time under Modi?
Yeah, well, you know, here really I got kind of a mixed response. Because it's like President Obama when he got elected the first time round, and then people were quickly getting disappointed with him because, you know, they expected so much. And the same thing I see happening here in Delhi as well. There's a lot of expectation. He is working from the ground up, you know, he's really trying to make these fundamental changes, which will not be seen very easily. For some time, you know, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. When you analyze what he's doing, really, it's cutting red tape. It's, you know, removing barriers, making it easier to live and work in India. He's getting business from abroad, and that is a lot of work, and he's achieved quite a bit in a year. But people just don't see it on the ground, and, you know, especially in Delhi. And one of the reasons for that is that, you know, Modi has the central government, right? But then you also, India is a federal structure, like the US. So you have different states and different state governments. So the chief minister or the governor, you know, of the state of Delhi here is someone else. And probably in Delhi you won't see that much of action here. But also, the issue that he's now being criticized on is farmer suicides. Because farmers in India is mainly an agrarian economy, and farmers face a lot of difficulty when they cannot pay their debts, sell their vegetables, and some of them have no option but to suicide, you know, and it's quite a painful reality here.
Let's take a moment, Gauri. You want to take 1 moment for a break, if you don't mind?
Right.
And we'll come back and talk more about India, and we'll also talk about Nepal. That's Gauri Khandekar. She's with FRIDE, which is a think tank in Madrid and Brussels. She's now in New Delhi. And we're talking midnight in Brussels and also in New Delhi. the view from New Delhi at the moment. We are delighted that we can join with her using Skype. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here enjoying our Monday afternoon with Gauri Khandekar, FRIDE in Madrid and Brussels. And we caught her instead, not in Brussels, but in New Delhi. So she's looking west, at least for most of this program, and she's looking in India. So one last thought about Mr. Modi and what's happened so far in his time in office. It strikes me from what you said that maybe, just maybe, we have the makings of a leader who would initiate and stay faithful to fundamental change. In Hawaii, we don't have that kind of leader very often. And if you look for leadership, I think you look for people with the courage to make fundamental change, right or wrong. And is Mr. Modi that? Is he possibly that kind of leader? What do you think?
Jay, you're so correct. He is exactly that kind of leader. And he's doing so many things that's really shaking the system up, you know. And it's not easy to find such leaders. After a long time, I think India got such a leader, but you know, he's that guy, and I certainly have confidence. He's making a lot of visible changes. So yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe when he's done in India, he can come to Hawaii and help us out.
Sure.
Okay, let's talk about one thing that we can't not talk about, and that's Nepal and Kathmandu. Yes. You mentioned that your 1-hour plane ride from Kathmandu, and you could feel the tremors while it was happening a few days ago. Can you tell us your experience and how people in India, in New Delhi specifically, which is on the east side and closer to Kathmandu, how people are reacting?
Yeah. Well, you know, Jay, it was in the morning on Saturday, and my bed started shaking violently. And I really thought, I thought there was somebody under my bed who got uncomfortable and wanted to get out.
No.
Yeah, like, no way I'm getting up now. But then I saw the lamp shake, and, you know, and I just knew it was an earthquake. And of course, Delhi was not the epicenter. So if the earthquake was so strong here, you could only imagine how strong it must have been in Nepal, you know. And it's sad because everything is crumbled, and you know, the city is destroyed. Kathmandu is mainly destroyed. You know, the people there, they're very poor as well. They lived in these brick houses which have all come tumbling down. Most of the old city has fallen, and I feel really sad because I was just there, and you know, I saw how beautiful the old structures are, and they're no more, you know. So it's really sad, and it's also the first time actually that there have been there has been an avalanche at the Everest base camp, and you can see a lot of videos online. You know, it's scary, and many people have died in Nepal, including foreigners. So the number stands at around 10,000 and counting.
Oh wow. So does India border on Nepal, on the south of Nepal? Is there a common border?
It's a long border. I mean, India, I think, borders Nepal on 3 sides.
Oh,
So most of Nepal is bordered by India.
okay.
And India has done a fantastic job in disaster relief.
Good.
Fantastic. The first respondent, it's been evacuating people, providing shelter and safety. A lot of the NGOs have been active as well. And India, and even last night, I mean, I tweeted that Spain asked India's help to evacuate its own people, Spanish citizens. And it's really commendable. I mean, the National Defense Relief Force of India has done a fantastic job, and so has Prime Minister Modi in managing this disaster.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear. Now, I wanted to ask you, though, looking at the photos, and we've covered this from other people who had photos, and we've talked about the devastation physically and sociologically in Kathmandu and in the area around Kathmandu. And it strikes me that this is so huge for a developing country that it will take a great effort, not only to make the initial recovery, but to rebuild their city, rebuild their society. And it won't be quick. And it's sort of, to me, I'm interested in your thoughts about this. To me, if Nepal gets the right kind of aid and support and money and expertise, then Nepal can be better than it was before. It can be invigorated in the process of rebuilding. On the other hand, if Nepal doesn't get those things, Nepal could slide down a slope, and it could become truly backwater and never recover from what has happened. Any thoughts? Do you agree with that as a tipping point kind of analysis? And do you have any sense about which way it might go in this case after this tragedy?
Jay, Nepal already lies at the bottom pit, of the poorest countries in the world. It's already really poor. Now, for years, Nepal has been getting a lot of aid from both China on the other border, and India. And it's straddling these two countries, major developing economies, who want Nepal's favor, and they're jostling for geopolitical hold in Nepal. So they've been pumping a lot, in terms of infrastructure money, in terms of money itself, development aid. But the problem in Nepal has been corruption. Most Nepal, what aid comes to Nepal has been siphoned off, or, and there is no accountability, because I think I mentioned to you last time when I went to Nepal that there were no street lights and there are no roads, There are hardly any roads and definitely no street lights. So after 7:38, it's dark. And you can't have that in the Nepali capital. So I really think it's about, it's about the corruption issue rather than the amount of aid that's been going, because Nepal also receives aid from the UK, the UN, and other international sources, other than India and China. So, it's sad, but I think now is a turning point in the sense that there is too much devastation, and what could be built would be visible to the international community. And it's nice that they would build, something new and probably something more concrete and better for the people. It's sad what's happened anyways, but I really wish that, the Nepalis get a better life after this.
Yes. We have an organization here in Hawaii called Aloha Medical Mission. They do surgery, volunteers, like Médecins Sans Frontières in Europe. And they do surgery in a small village on an annual basis in Nepal. And I've made movies. We here at ThinkTech have made movies of that process, of that group going over there and all. And certainly it's a developing country, and healthcare is not up to a Western level for sure. There aren't many doctors around, and nor is there political will to change that. So do you think that Prime Minister Modi will go beyond just recovery efforts, you know, emergency efforts, that he will take Nepal under his wing? Do you think China will do that for its own strategical reasons? Will Nepal, now that it's in the news, you know, in this very tragic event, will Nepal become a kind of darling in the tragedy? That people, countries around it, will help it restore itself to a level, unprecedented level?
Yeah, I agree with you. That Nepal will, I mean, is that kind of country, you know, which is kind of favored by both India and China. But you know, I must say that just last year, I mean, not last year, within this year, yeah, when Modi visited Nepal in 2014, he offered a $1 billion line of credit for, you know, infrastructure and development purposes. And that is there, that is going on. I mean, of course, I think that just speaking from India's side, that Modi will probably do more than, you know, than most countries would, and China would match it, you know, of course. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anybody outside of Nepal can really make these changes at the grassroots level, like you mentioned, you know, getting better healthcare, getting better services, and that's only the Nepali people who can really do it, the Nepali government. So even though anybody would, you know, help with aid and infrastructure or, you know, development activities, there's little that can be done to change what's on the ground.
I suggest that in the 21st century, with climate change and these terrible earthquakes and other seismic events, you know, it's not just that Mother Nature is mad at us, which may be the case, actually. I mean, Mother Nature is getting ticked off already with the way we've treated the planet. But aside from that, maybe there is emerging this kind of international morality to help the fallen country, to step in and do whatever can be done to raise it up from the disaster. And, you know, we've seen that a few times. I couldn't compare the levels of actual aid, but I know that a lot of people, you know, get involved. A lot of organizations have been established to help do that. And maybe Nepal will take that whole process further, and that it will become kind of a custom, if you will, a historical custom, where if a country has fallen that way, we step in. I wouldn't want to compare it with Greece. That's different. But I would compare with other places of natural disasters.
You're right, Jay. I mean, it's a good thing anyways, because I think we're headed in that direction, that we're going to have a lot of climate refugees, a lot of countries that are going to suffer from climate change. So it's, you know, we need to start thinking in that mindset in a way. You know, I mean, what's happened in Fiji, for instance, the whole, the typhoon that hit Fiji. I mean, it's unthinkable, you know, it was total destruction. Maldives would soon be, you know, going completely under, and they're starting to build floating islands, you know, with the Dutch help. Bangladesh would soon probably, you know, be underwater if the levels increase, you know, global warming. And you have to manage climate refugees. And how do you do that? You know, so it's a good thing that we are becoming conscious. But I honestly think that the next generations, people of my age as well, are so much more conscious of the earth, you know, of the planet and where we live. Because, I mean, egotistical as we are, we think we're hurting nature, we think we're hurting the planet or Mother Nature, but, you know, we're hurting ourselves, because Mother Nature will survive, and it's, we're really egotistical to think that it's us, that it's the planet we're hurting, so.
You know, and at the end of the day, we're left with the fundamental question of the 18th century, that is whether humankind is perfectible or not perfectible. And talking with you, Gauri, makes me feel that, yes, it is ultimately perfectible. Thank you so much. Gauri Khandekar of FRIDE, a think tank in Madrid and also Brussels. coming to a continent near you. In this case, it's the continent of India. She reports to us the view from India here on midnight in Brussels. Go figure that out. Thank you so much, Gary. As always, really enjoy these discussions. We'll be back to you in a couple of weeks for more.
See you.